Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. In December of last year, I realized that because of a promotion I'd received during the summer, I was able to afford a new apartment. My old apartment had a bunch of chronic problems with it, and half of them were the kind of thing that I might have picked up on. Should I have given it a proper inspection beforehand? So when it came to shopping around for a new place, that was beyond thorough. When it came to the kind of research I put in after I admitted to asking an estate agent how thick the apartment door was, a friend of mine would kind of get on my case and say, "No landlord is ever going to offer you a tenancy." And in a way, he was right, but I found my approach only put off the dodgy landlords, while the decent ones completely understood, while I was asking so many questions, which is why, when I actually found somewhere I liked, it made the experience way more stressful than exciting. I was competing with over 100 other applicants for the tenancy. It has these huge western-facing windows on the second floor too, meaning you get some incredible sunsets, along with great spots for houseplants in the shower. My God, the shower built in waterproof Bluetooth speakers. Our steam jets, UV lights, to stop bacteria from growing anywhere. Okay, I'll quit flexing about my shower and spoilers. I got the flat, but it's not like it gives me much joy anymore. Anyway, none of those amenities do anymore, and the only thing I find myself paying any serious attention to is the living room ceiling. Weird picture, isn't it? A guy just sitting there, drinking coffee, eating dinner, eyes glued to the blank white plaster above him. But I catch myself doing it an awful lot, a disturbing amount, actually, and now I'll tell you why. Like I said, everything about this flat seemed perfect, and for the most part, it was, but literally, 8 days after I move in, right while I'm still quietly confident that everything was in working order, stuff hits the fan. I'm sitting on the couch watching TV, and the rain is just pelting against the windows, this horrible cold December rain, the kind that makes it kind of thrill hearing pattering against the glass, so I'm just chilling when I hear this tapping sound coming from down the hallway. I don't really think anything of it at first, like it honestly sounded like someone in the hallway outside the flat, but after a while, I decide to investigate, because the sound just isn't ceasing. As I walk into the hall, I can tell almost right away that the tapping sound is coming from my bathroom, and when I open up the door, I'm faced with this steady leak coming from the air vent in the ceiling. Just 8 days and 8 freaking days, and I have a leak. Yeah, it's only a minor one. But as anyone who's dealt with leaking pipes or dodgy plumbing might tell you, even the smallest amount of water can be absolutely catastrophic. If a leak isn't dealt with right away, the water might pool somewhere out of reach, rotting wood and causing that disgusting, stagnant water smell. It can be a massive pain. So I'm kind of panicking, looking up the names of local plumbers, cursing the landlady's name all the while for not telling me if there were leaky pipes. It had been raining all day, so it could have easily been something to do with all the rain, but I had an entire third floor above me. How was the roof drainage merging with the vents? And that's when I had my big brain, or not so big brain, moment, and realized that it might well be coming from the flat upstairs. Maybe they'd left the bath running or something. I remember thinking it was annoying, but accidents happen. I run upstairs, knock on the door of the unit directly above me, but get no answer. Then, making sure no one's around to watch me, I kneel down and put my ear to the keyhole, innocently enough, but try explaining that to some stranger with no context. I expected to maybe hear some running water, maybe even the sound of someone mopping up the overflowed bathwater, but nothing. It's just silence on the other side. Given that I can hardly go kicking the door in, I just go back to my flat, whack a mop bucket under the leak, then get on the phone with a landlady, in case she had a plumber on retainer or something. Being the nice lady that she is, my landlady calls me back within minutes to let me know a plumber is on his way. But given that he was already at a job, I'd have to wait about an hour, no big drama. It was a managed bowl leak for the time being, anyway, but we'd still have to gain entry into the flat upstairs to make sure if it was the source of the whole thing. So I take it upon myself to walk back upstairs every so often to check if someone had returned home. At least, I presumed they were out. There was no other reason why they wouldn't just answer the door, right? I checked the first time, then the second was maybe 15 minutes later, then the third was just shy of 9 at night, like 20:57 on the dot. I remember because it was 15 minutes before the plumber was due to arrive, and I checked the clock just before making one final trip upstairs to check if the neighbors were home. Only when I get to the front door of their flat, which I'm 100% certain had been closed for the previous 2 calls, I can see that it's ever so slightly ajar. I'm certain someone is home by that point, so out of pure politeness, I get the door a few loud knocks before shouting like hello, expecting someone to appear any second. But again, there's no reply. But that time, I can definitely hear the sound of dripping water inside the apartment, so I go ahead and push the door open, seeing that almost the entire carpet is soaking wet. The flat is laid out exactly like mine is. So I know the first room I'm going to encounter is the bathroom. The linoleum floor is flooded, the sink is flooded, but the taps are off. There's just a steady drip, drip drip from one of them, like it hadn't been turned off all the way again. I call out to see if anyone's home, kind of worried I might be seen as rude for just sort of barging in. Yet I'm greeted by complete silence, just the sound of my own trainer squishing on the sodden carpet as I'm walking through the flat. If you're imagining this as being somewhat of a creepy scene, you'd be dead, right? The closer I got to that living room, the more I realized that something might be terribly wrong here. And what do you know there was? I think I knew she was dead from the moment I laid eyes on her. It was the awkward way she was lying there on the soaking wet floor, with her eyelids kind of half closed. It's hard to describe, but I've never seen a person look like that, like she was frozen in mid-blink or something. I just knew, like the gut reaction was so intense that I simply didn't need to check the girl's pulse. I didn't need to call out for her to wake up. I mean, I did, just in case. Part of that gut reaction to death was wanting her to wake up for purely selfish reasons too, so I'd stop freaking out. But it was no good. She was gone after I called 999. I tried some CPR and chest compressions as best as I could manage, but nothing would rouse her. It was the single most traumatic experience in my life, splashing around in the half-flooded flat, begging that poor girl to wake up, all before the moment I finally just sat on my butt and accepted that she was dead and there was nothing more I could do. I never cried like that before. I'm not ashamed to admit it, and I sat there like that until I saw blue flashing lights in the window. At first, the police were brilliant. They came in my flat with me, made a note of the leak, telling me it was going to be okay and that I did everything right. I just sat there nursing a cup of tea and telling them everything exactly as it happened. I remember touching on the whole fact that the doors seemed to have spontaneously opened, meaning that at some point in the time between 2035 and 2057, either the victim or her killer had opened the flat's door. For whatever reason, the 2 policemen shot each other, this look that I misinterpreted as like an OOF moment, but in retrospect, I think that was a sign of things to come. They definitely started by treating me like I was the poor, innocent member of the public who happened to have stumbled across the tragic death of a young woman. But it didn't take long before they changed their attitude entirely. I got a call from a policeman, calling himself D. Walker, who politely invited me to the local police station for further questioning. He assured me I wasn't in any trouble. They just wanted to go over a few details with me in light of new evidence that had emerged. It was an informal chat, no need for a solicitor or anything serious like that. So me being an absolute tool, I volunteered to talk to 2 murder police in an interview room with no one else present. They kept up the good cop routine for a while, going over my statement with me while buttering me up for trying the CPR. But a distinct change of tone came when one of the CID blokes asked me if I'd ever been up to the girl's apartment before the night in question. I told them now that had only been there for just over a week when the leak started. And as much as it makes me sound like a bit of a jerk, I'm just not the kind of guy to greet new neighbors with a freaking muffin basket or whatever. Then, bizarrely, their follow-up question was if I knew anything about electricals, like, if I've ever worked as an electrician or repaired appliances for a living. Again, I told them no, but it was my turn to ask a question, mainly why they asked me such an unexpected question. That's when they hit me with the fact that I was basically their number one suspect. And the way the guy said it was honestly horrific. Look, mate. The thing is, we've come up against a bit of a brick wall here, and we're hoping you can help us out. We started off all friendly, like we were old pals or something. You've given a brilliant statement here, and we're really grateful for you going into such detail and giving up your spare time. There's just one big problem. You said you knocked on the flat about 3 times between 8 and 9 o'clock, one at about 2 o'clock till and once just before 9. We got the time of death as being 8:45, at the very latest. So you saying that you didn't hear anything when you knocked the second time? Well, something is going on in that flat that causes this girl's death. I find that very confusing, don't you? I remember every word that he said, and I knew it wasn't even meant to be accusatory. I don't think not overtly anyway, but I knew what they were getting at. They had to eliminate me as a suspect. But unfortunately, only for me, that was much easier said than done, because my fingerprints were everywhere, my clothing fibers were everywhere, and there wasn't a single witness of anyone else having visited that girl's flat that day. No one but me. By my own admission, it started to become obvious that the police actually had a suspect in mind, and it was me, although I was never actually arrested. In the weeks that followed, I had my flat searched twice, and police were almost constantly hanging around the building. Both flats were in. I noticed that they seemed to take particular interest in the building's wiring, and once or twice, they seemed to be accompanied by some kind of tradesman. I'm guessing an electrician, and that's about the same time I pieced together that the police thought the girl had died in some kind of freak electrical accident. Maybe a current had run through the flooding and just zapped her right there. But wouldn't that mean that I'd get electrocuted too? But that's just it. Despite the police refusing to tell me much about the investigation, I'm pretty sure they theorized that I'd somehow killed the girl using a jolt of electricity, which, in my book, showed how stumped they were for a legit theory. Don't get me wrong, the prospect of being the main suspect in the murder getting a wrongful conviction or something. That's a terrifying thing for sure. But like I mentioned, I was never arrested, and after a while, the whole thing just went away naturally. I wanted to know everything the police knew concerning my neighbor's death, but after basically being accused of murder by them, at one point, I wasn't all that keen on drawing any more attention to myself. What's clear is that I was just meters away from a murder. I had no idea what was happening and that I'd only just missed whoever the killer was when they slipped out of the apartment and left the door open. But why would they leave the door open? I couldn't have known that there was a leak, so why not just close the door and rule out the possibility of someone stumbling across the murder scene? And what was the point of flooding the flat in the first place? It wasn't just the bathroom sink. The kitchen sink was overflowing too. But why? On top of all that, I don't get the whole electrocution angle either. It seems like such an elaborate way to kill someone, flooding the apartment and then running a strong enough current through the water. And how would a person go about doing that remotely? Because they'd have to, otherwise they'd be killed too. Which leads me back to the question of who opened the door then. Was it some elaborate way of her taking her own life, and she wanted someone to find her before she went rotten? Too many questions. So are you all starting to understand why I spend an awful lot of time just staring at my ceiling now? I can't seem to shake all the questions that have arisen since I moved in here. And what's worse, I'm kind of stuck here. Yeah, it's a nice place, but Jesus, it's tainted now, and it's going to take a long time before I'm going to feel normal again. Here. It's not like I have the money for a new deposit, and finding a place I actually like is tough going, and that's the gist of it. I suppose. I've been living under what feels like a tomb, and the mysteries of my neighbor's death have been keeping me up at night for freaking months now. I'd be very interested to hear other people's theories on this, because, much like the police seem to be, I'm completely flummoxed as to what the explanation is. I mean, it's probably something perfectly rational, something tedious but tragic. But then again, sometimes my imagination starts ticking over and I start thinking that something entirely more sinister is to blame. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.